My dad taught me as a child that if you're the smartest man in the room, change the room. I have an addendum to it. If a lot of people are smarter than you in the room, still change the room. But today I don't have a choice. I have to be here. Good evening, gentlemen and the newly powered ladies. I'm sorry I'll be reading a bit and talking a bit, so please excuse my looking down at times. It's lovely to be here after 32 years. The last time I was here was when I was taking the IIT JEE exam and they failed me. Can I demand an actual replay, please? So thank you to everyone for having invited me here. My batchmate, Professor P.K. Mishra, every time I hear one of my batchmates have become a professor, I feel so much younger. So Pangea, and we're talking about really nearly 300 million years back. With you and me, I barely remember anything that they told me about fluid mechanics 20 years back. Nothing at all. And it's not my fault. It's the mechanics itself that's fluid. So why am I talking about such ancient history? Personally, I do not like to go into yesterday, but the motion takes me there. And I must mention about the motion when Ankur sent me an email telling me the subject. I almost needed subtitles for the email. I almost wrote him back saying, can you please send this in English? I could barely understand the subject. And then I read about it, trust me. And in my view of the subject, I will disappoint you in a few ways. Being a filmmaker, you might expect an audio-visual presentation, but Professor P.K. Mishra thought of me a little late, so I could not do that. And two, you may find me a little negative and disappointing in discussing this concept of a unified world. Honestly, I did start with the idea of making cross-continent bridges, but I had too many problems. They were too long and very expensive. And when I started with the east of our country, they said, you know, we have our own problems with roads and bridges. You can't make a bridge out of here into another continent. Then I went up north, and north was having problems with running trains like Samjhauta Express, so I thought maybe that too was not a good starting point. West has another issue, that we have a CRZ there. You can't build things around the ocean, so I couldn't build a bridge from the west of India. And south, as you may all know, that we did try making a bridge up to Sri Lanka, and it didn't work. So the bridges was not a good idea. And then I thought of thinking of a really great idea of a universal currency. And trust me, the moment I thought of this universal currency, all stock markets crashed. I was okay to do without them, but then I got reminded of the European Economic Community, EU, which has been in existence for quite some time now. And as far as I understand, and there are experts here, more than 50% of Europe is not a part of it. So maybe the entire concept of bringing countries together through a common currency had some inherent flaws. I'm not an economic specialist, so I don't know what, but of course there were some flaws. So I thought of digging deep into why when nature made a big land of mass become several continents, why was it so that we had more and more lines drawn around those pieces of land? And when I started digging deep, I figured that about, like I said, 300 million years back, we were a beautiful, enormous land of mass that for some divine or tectonic activity drifted into several continents. It could not be human activity because humans didn't exist then. Otherwise, I would suspect them. And during this shift of different pieces of that Pangea, I don't know how many of you know, India managed to travel the most from some Southeast Africa to a place where finally Britishers showed up. I wonder what will happen if we were not there. Where would they form the East India Company? So this displacement either obviously was a divine activity, if not a tectonic activity, because the only force larger than the two put together did not exist. The human activity started about 100 to 200,000 years back, approximately, and that's quite some approximation of 100,000 years. It is irrelevant here, but very important. One of the important distinctions between animals and us, there are many, but one important distinction is that they slowly became bipedals. They started walking on two legs. And this was about 4 million years back. And I looked up the Darwin's theory of human evolution, and I don't know how many of you have seen that when somebody has made a minor adjustment to it, you start from two-legged animals to slowly become the human being, and in that adjustment you see the human being coming back saying, let's go back, we messed up. So I found that as well. So the earliest human race existed in Africa and India. So the conflicts, the earliest conflicts between human beings must have started in Africa and India. I do not take onus, but yeah, it did start here. And we keep blaming the conflicts on food and survival. We keep blaming it food and survival that those creatures started killing each other. But couldn't all of us have been vegetarians? Maybe the concept of flesh wasn't necessary after all. They were eating things and developing a taste for it anyways. Like I developed a taste for sushi. Yeah, taste for sushi, quite a paradoxical state. Have you ever noticed no one eats tiger meat? No one eats elephant meat. Have you noticed? Why? Because you can't kill them. You only eat animals that you can kill. Now there is a metaphor there. We killed things, creatures that were weaker than us. So after all, it was not about food and survival, it was about supremacy. It was about power. Power is a great aphrodisiac. The desire to rule was the reason why humans drifted. It was in the DNA to feel superior, it was in the nature to rule. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that we were going to drift into various territories, continents, states. Nevertheless, whether or not Pangaea had drifted, we would have still drawn these lines because it was in our DNA, it was in our nature to feel superior to other human beings, and in that process, we were meant to fight, we were meant to have conflicts. The early instances of territory defining must have started with a phenomenon like a tiger rubbing its body on a tree to leave a smell there, to draw some sort of an invisible boundary or some such phenomenon. We like boundaries. We still do. To be able to see if so many boundaries can really be broken down or at least blurred out, let's look at the nature of these boundaries over the history. Let's come back from those millions of years to closer to Christ. That is when the real recorded history begins. Also with the birth of Christ, it also became a little easier to put dates to events. My personal observation is that up until the Cold War, the fight was about governance. The fight was about controlling and governing the entire world, at least more and more territories. These territories were built over years in favor of language, ethnicity, culture, etc. And every territory wanted to expand to an extent where they would rule the world. They would decide how the human race would exist. So whether it was the Roman Empire or the Ottoman Empire or the Prussian Empire or the Austro-Hungarian Empire or our very own, the British Empire, they all wanted to rule the world. There are three kinds of people in the world. One, who rule the world. Two, who want to rule the world. Three, who would rather rule the world but they don't know about it. So, we all want to rule the world in one way or the other, period. The nature of attempts to do so has changed over the years. Earlier it was dynastic. There were kings and there were dynasties, and then military, and then a lethal combination of politics and military. The first World War started for language. The second because the first didn't kill enough people. And then the Cold War, when everyone was trying to align with a power which will probably be the ruling regime in the world. And if you notice, ever since the fall of Soviet Union, no government is actually aligning to rule the whole world. No government. So ever since the fall of Soviet Union, you see no government is even attempting an alignment where one government will govern the rest of the world. And I'm still not ruling out the ruling the world field. It is still about ruling the world. The method has changed. It is too subtle and largely incomprehensible, but as vicious and tenacious as it used to be, or maybe more. Now it is not the government that wants to rule the world, it's the businesses that want to rule the world. It's the businesses that want to run the government so that the businesses can rule the world. What do you think? The wars over the Middle East were about creating peace and order there? Africa needed it more. But we had various conflicts in Middle East. And why? Because they had the oil. And through oil, you could control the business and the economy of the entire world. So the businesses were trying to be there to control the oil there. And guess what? There was a very interesting byproduct, which was weapons. Because when you have a conflict, you have a fight, and then you need weapons. And that is the largest industry in the world. So while these conflicts were taking place in the Middle East, we were trying to capture oil. At the same time, we were selling weapons. Businesses were manipulating governments into these conflicts. So they were running the world. And now, wait till it gets more dangerous. Now, oil is not what it is. It is water. So, it will slowly move out of there, and now, as I speak right now, and listen to me, we are debating. And debate is just a disguise. It's actually a war that is starting. We are debating whether water is a commodity or a natural resource. Because if water is a commodity, then it will be sold. You can still walk without petrol, and you can still bicycle from one place to other without petrol. You can't live without water. And that water will be controlled by businesses. And in order to control that water, governments will need to be manipulated, and the governments will need to be run by the businesses. So eventually, it's the businesses that will run the world. So, the ruling the world concept is still there. It is in the human DNA. It has only evolved from being a dynasty to a military to political to now business, wherein the idea remains the same: rule the world. Long back I was writing a story that I later aborted that would possibly explain to you how businesses can rule the world. A very mighty tool called the SIM card that you all have in your phones. Every time you need some information, you, through that SIM card, go to Google, Wikipedia, find information about people. So the information that you're receiving right now is coming to you through SIM cards. It is increasing. Your dependence on that SIM card is increasing. Imagine a day when all the SIM cards in this world will be controlled by one operator. Say Vodafone. Are they our sponsors? Okay, Vodafone. So then, if Vodafone sends an SMS to 7 billion people in this world that get together at Tahrir Square, because this is what's happening there. 7 billion people get the same information at the same time. See how convenient it is. 7 billion people at the same time can be told anything that you want. And this is how you control them, and this is how you rule them. So this is one of the reasons why I say businesses are now going to rule the world. As far as my belief system and understanding of the world is concerned, we, at a human level, have gone way beyond where we can become a good bunch of people who will coexist in peace. Way beyond. we'll still, it's impossible that we'll accept the same governance, language, currency, etc. One basic idea that we have drifted too far away from is equality. And I mocked at the recent fad of talking about empowerment of women at the beginning of my speech. And that is because the moment I choose to empower you, it makes me more powerful than you. Men cannot empower women. We have to start seeing women as our equals. So that equality is something that needs to be brought in. The key word is equality. You and I must treat each other equally. All human beings should treat everyone else equally. So we may never achieve a physical Pangea like it was, or a socio-political Pangea that has been attempted and failed. But we can certainly achieve a virtual human Pangea, where people will respect each other, care for each other, assess the available natural resources and divide fairly. It is fine to desire to be superior. We must learn to feel superior to equals, not to the ones who don't have a voice or a choice. Khalil Gibran said very famously, coming generations will learn equality from poverty. This statement is open to interpretations. Mine is, we must dry ourselves so poor of lust that we can see and look around everyone in the eye with equality. And that, my friends, is a virtual human Pangea. Thank you.